IAS Cargo Airlines, International Aviation Services Limited, trading as IAS Cargo Airlines from 1975, is a defunct wholly privately owned, independent British airline that was based at London Gatwick Airport in the United Kingdom. It commenced operations in 1967 and went bankrupt in 1980, following a merger with London Stansted-based Trans Meridian Air Cargo TMAC to form the short-lived British Cargo Airlines. History. Beginning. International Aviation Services Limited was an air transport consultancy formed in 1966. It commenced worldwide cargo charters from London Gatwick in 1967 with leased, second-hand Bristol Britannia 300F turboprop equipment. It began replacing leased equipment with its own aircraft in 1971, acquired its own air operator's certificate in June 1972 in the name of International Aviation Services UK Limited, and adopted the IAS Cargo Airlines trading name 4 years later. Commercial development. IAS Cargo Airlines acquired additional second-hand Britannia turboprop freighters as well as a Canadair CL-44 swing-tail freighter during the early 1970s to expand its fleet in response to growing worldwide demand for its pure freight servicing. Becoming a jet operator. When the world's major scheduled airlines began re-equipping their fleets with new generation wide-bodied jet aircraft from the early 1970s, a growing number of older generation narrow-bodied jet planes, such as the Boeing 707 and the Douglas DC-8, became available on the second-hand market at prices smaller airlines that were lacking the resources. IAS Cargo Airlines became one of these smaller airlines that took advantage of this situation by purchasing its first DC-8-50F jet freighter in 1974. Jet operations commenced the following year. As business continued to expand, it introduced further DC-8-50Fs into its fleet during the second half of the 1970s. By the end of the 1970s, the company's fleet mainly consisted of DC-8-50Fs. By that time, it was receiving a growing number of air freight consignments that were shipped to its Gatwick base from the other side of the Channel. In October 1978, the firm introduced its first larger capacity stretched DC-8 Super 60 series freighter, a -62 CF wet leased from Finnair. 1. Merging with a rival. Stansted-based Trans Meridian Air Cargo TMAC. TMAC also operated a similar aircraft fleet consisting of the same aircraft types, including a pair of DC-8Fs. Therefore, combining both companies' businesses to achieve greater operational synergies, as well as to attain greater economies of scale, seemed to be the next logical step to ensure survival in a competitive marketplace dominated by being more powerful rivals. IAS Cargo Airlines merged with TMAC on 15 August 1979 to create British Cargo Airlines, which began trading under its new name 5 days later. The merged entity's fleet comprised 15 aircraft, including 8 DC-8 jet freighters, 6 CL-44D, and 1 CL-44-0 turboprop freighters. The jets were based at Gatwick, while the turboprops were stationed at Stansted. Closing chapter. The newly created British Cargo Airlines only had a brief life. It folded in March 1980. Causes of collapse. The main reasons for the combined entity's collapse included a deep recession in Britain, which affected UK-based manufacturing companies that were the airline's main customers. This caused a slump in those companies' output of manufactured goods and led to a collapse in demand for specialist air freight services. Steeply rising jet fuel prices in the aftermath of the fall of the Shah of Iran. This increased the operating costs of relatively fuel-thirsty narrow-bodied jet freighters such as the Boeing 707 and the DC-8 compared with more fuel-efficient wide-bodied freighters. A big influx of long-haul wide-bodied aircraft capacity into the fleets of British Airways and British Caledonian, Britain's two principal scheduled airlines at the time, as well as their main overseas competitors' fleets during the late 1970s/early 1980s. This resulted in a major increase in belly-hold cargo capacity that cost freight forwarders and shippers less to fill compared with the higher rates that were required to fill narrow-body pure freighters profitably. Incidents and accidents. Code data. Former IATA code, FFF, code FF, code FF, code FF, code FFF. Former ICAO code, former call sign. Notes and citations, citations. Notes, citations.